Because when you're driving around and you look up and you hear that final trumpet blare and you realize that the sky is splitting open and the heavens are spilling down onto the earth below, raining fire and demons everywhere you look, and people ask you, all you've done with your life is answer a bunch of questions about Big Trouble in Little China. Is that a life worth living? Let me tell you, old Josh always says, I did my part. And when you get down to it, everyone says, hey, what about that final question? What about the big question of everything? What does all that matter? And you know what old Josh always says in a time like this? Video's going up on Friday. Question number 1. What is the game that they're playing in the beginning of the movie? Well, there's actually a bit of debate involved in this one. Sources seem to differ, and there's the possibility that they are actually playing 2 different games. Here's what we see. At first, we see the dealer character flipping over a bowl, and there appears to be something inside as he covers it. Now, Jack actually tells us what they're playing as he states, Now, this is the classic Chinese gambling game, Fan Tan, in its original format. It was created centuries ago, but popularized in the 19th century amongst Chinese immigrants in California. Under that bowl are beans, or any small round object, or whatever, and the players select a number between 0 and 3. Jack has apparently selected 3 as he excitedly shouts out the number. Although you don't see this, what happens next in the game is that the beans are divided into equal piles of 4. When the piles can no longer be evenly distributed, there'll be a couple beans left over, and it will only be 0 beans, 1 bean, 2 beans, or 3 beans. The person with the matching number wins, and in this case, it was Jack. Fan Tan is considered a kind of a back alley, low rent kind of game, so it's appropriate that Jack would be here playing it. But as the morning breaks, suddenly there's dominoes on the table that he's flipping over, and the little bowl beans seem to be gone. That's because at this point, they've switched games and have moved on to Pai Gao, another Chinese gambling game. Variations of this with cards is still played in modern casinos, but the traditional style uses special dominoes. Here you can see Jack with 4 dominoes, a set of 2 red dots and set with 6 red dots and 6 white dots. These are 2 of the highest scoring matches in the game, basically the equivalent of Jack getting something like a royal flush, known as teen and day. But to us, they're heaven and earth, boys, what can I tell you? I realize that this is not one of the deeper questions of the movie and doesn't require a lot of theorizing and more just basic research, but while watching it with my mom, she said, "What game is that?" And I had no clue, so Mom, this one's for you. Question number 2. Hey, that guy's familiar. Is that Raiden? There's a trio of villains here, aptly named the 3 Storms. This guy's name is Rain, and he basically flies through the air with the greatest of ease. This is Thunder, who can expand his form. And then there's Lightning, and I don't think I have to tell you what he does. He may look familiar to you though if you've ever played Mortal Kombat, since he bears more than a passing resemblance to the character of Raiden. Although quite a few of the elements in the film are based on Chinese folklore, these characters appear to be original creations, and their look was most likely designed by the production designers and costume team. Much later on, when the co-creators of Mortal Kombat were designing their game, they came across the Japanese legend of Raijin, the Thunder God, who looked like this. I guess this wasn't satisfactory for their game aesthetic, so they chose to create an entirely new look for him. They simply knew that they wanted him to be a warrior who threw around lightning bolts. During the creation process, they thought to use the large straw hats that the 3 Storms wore in Big Trouble, and decided to use one to give Raiden a distinctive silhouette in contrast to the other characters. Outside of that, they claim that the character has no similarities, considering that Raiden is considered a godlike figure with pretty vast power and operates independently, whereas Lightning is simply an enhanced human being, and is subservient to Lo Pan. They claimed that they were unaware that people would make comparisons due to the similarity of the hat. Yes, the hat, and the traditional garb. and the ability to conduct and shoot electricity from their fingertips. But other than that, completely different. Question number 3. What's in Jack's truck? Yes, the Pork Chop Express, Jack Burton's truck, one of the most essential characters in the film. In the beginning, Wang has his one true love, Mao Yin, kidnapped, but so does Jack when they take his truck. But what's in it? What's he hauling? You never see what he's hauling in the movie, and for the most part, it's absent of a trailer, so he's not currently carrying anything, but in the opening of the film, he's fully equipped and transporting something. But what is it? Well, seemingly, the name is what it implies, as he's hauling pigs. It's very hard to notice because it is a brief shot, but after he stops the truck in the Chinese market, you can see some people grabbing into it and grabbing out a couple of the little porkers, presumably for immediate use. So I kind of want to go there because the BLTs would be damn fresh there. To back it up, apparently the script refers to him as hauling a pig-filled truck. And the screenwriter declares that sandwich that we see Jack inhaling in between CB diatribes, ham. So it seems that Jack is a guy who gets high on his own supply. Question number 4. How could they not find a green-eyed girl in all that time? Seriously, it shouldn't have been that hard. There are 6 billion people on this planet, and it's estimated that approximately 2% of them have green eyes. That leaves around 120 million people across the world with emerald peepers. You would think that Lo would be able to track one of them down. I know that there's a line in the film that Chinese girls don't come with green eyes.
Chinese girls do not come with green eyes.
But that's not even necessarily true, because there's an entire village in northwest China called Lijian that has an unusual rate of green-eyed citizens, with over half of the citizens sporting the color. Myths persist that the reason is due to having Caucasian bloodlines dating back to a group of captured Roman soldiers, but that has been debunked as a myth, and the anomaly is simply a genetic fluke, but there are plenty of green-eyed people there. But I mean, David Lo Pan was a pretty rich guy from what they're saying, and considering how quickly he snapped up Gracie Law, it's pretty clear that he wasn't even dead set on finding someone of Chinese origins. He was down for whatever. It really shouldn't have mattered anyway, since he was meant to sacrifice them right afterwards, so he wouldn't even have to have feelings for her. When Jack asks about why it took so long, he makes a comment about
how seldom it works out.
But again, if he has to sacrifice her immediately after, it really shouldn't matter if it worked out. Just grab a random green-eyed girl, marry her, sacrifice, and you're done. So here's the thing, that line about things seldom working out, he's referring to the ritual of the burning blade. What I think is that David thought to use a white girl long ago and probably brought in a bunch, but none of them could pass the test. He does admit that there were more, but never says how many. I'd estimate a lot. But I think that there's possibly something about the nature of Chinese girls that make the test easier to pass. I don't know exactly what qualifies someone to tame the blade, but perhaps girls from China are just more predestined for it. And Gracie is a wild outlier. Although based on her last name and connections to Chinatown, I'm not ruling out that she does have some Chinese heritage as well. Question number 5. What is that red-furred beast? Possibly one of the standout creatures from the film, the hairy ginger bastard shows up about halfway through to kidnap Gracie Law. He pops up again in the finale for a quick fight with Jack, but is rendered immobile by a sharp kick to the keister. He's also there in the end tag, appearing in the back of the Pork Chop Express, setting up a possible sequel, or at least hinting that Jack's story is not quite done yet. This beast is mostly an original creation and is credited as simply the sewer monster, but in the script it's further elaborated as an unnatural monster of myth and legend, a Chinese wild man. Now, the Chinese wild man, otherwise known as the Yeren, is basically the Bigfoot of China and are also commonly called hairy men, and have been featured in movies such as China, Bigfoot Legend of the Yeren, and Journey to the Forbidden Valley. The Big Trouble version isn't an exact duplicate of the Legend's depiction though, due to some artistic license. The visual arts director, George Jensen, tells that the first designs for the creature were more horror-oriented, and Carpenter wanted it to resemble some sort of mixture of vampire and wolf. So all the original concepts just look like werewolves with very wolf-like snouts, and they just didn't work. They later found a picture of a mummy that inspired the facial structure of the finished concept, and FX artist Steve Johnson would then bring that to life, adding his own interesting spin on the beast. Although not much else is learned about the creature in the movie, the comic book continuation, co-written by Carpenter himself, establishes that it's there because it's bonded with Lo Pan and is a hell beast. When Pan is killed, the monster then becomes tied to the person who kills him, Jack. Burton takes him in, names him Pete, and takes him on further adventures. Question number 6. What's in the 6-demon bag? Well, I mean, the obvious answer is
wind, fire, all that kind of thing.
But the bag was actually a creation of the film itself and not built upon existing lore. It's become a thing of its own now, a little slice of pop cultural fun that has worked its way into other media. Apparently in the World of Warcraft, it can be found as a magic weapon to use, and its usage is described as being able to blast enemies in front of you with the power of wind, fire, you know the rest, and has a 30-minute cooldown period. It's also the name of an album by the wild experimental rock band Man, and an album I purchased simply based on the name alone, and it was a decision I absolutely did not regret. Oddly, any attempts to research more about it pretty much just results in search results pointing to World of Warcraft, and there doesn't really seem to be any more information on it other than this throwaway line in the movie. During the course of the final fight, Egg does pull several items from the bag, including this crystal, which delivers the as-promised fire, and then throws another at Thunder. And then he has this rocket launcher thing, but it's not particularly clear if that comes from the bag or not. In fact, none of the tricks that we see Egg use are seen being pulled from the bag. We can assume that it's where he got them, but we don't actually see it. But I think that it's safe to assume that the crystals that he's palming and using during the final fight are the 6 demons. We see him use either 3 or 4 of them during the finale, and 1 more when they find the truck. And it's likely that he has a few more stowed in there, or ones he used off camera, although I'm not sure why he didn't use one on Lightning instead of dropping the statue, considering that he had one in there. But let's face it, dropping the statue was cooler anyway. So yeah, that's basically the long answer, but really, the only answer that you need is
wind, fire, all that kind of thing.
Question number 7. If Lo Pan is a ghost, how is he holding that needle? Remember that whole bit about Lo Pan being a spirit and not having a physical form? Remember when he could walk through walls, and how he wanted to touch Mao Yin but couldn't because he's not of flesh and is simply a spirit? Remember how he had to take on the form of a shriveled old man in order to have a physical form? Well, then how does he just grab a hold of this here needle then? He sure seems pretty solid right here. Alright, come on, let's face it, he's not totally intangible though, right? The truck clearly seems to hit something, right? I know Jack says that they went right through him, but there sure seems to be some contact there. And here, he's sitting on this throne, not merely hovering above it. And he's standing on this escalator thing, not doing his floaty thing that he did earlier. But he's not actually straight up touching something like he is here. Clearly, he could have made it look like the truck hit him to mess with Jack, since it doesn't actually damage the truck. So there's no evidence that there was contact. And he could just be making it look like sitting or standing or whatever. But here, he's actually interacting with a physical object. You can't even say it's a mystical intangible object either, since this guy brings it to him. But let's not forget my favorite word when it comes to figuring things out. Magic. Don't forget this is all a ceremony to appease Ching Dai, and the end of the process would make him entirely flesh. There's no saying that the process hadn't already begun, and part of the ritual was that he would achieve the ability to interact with items in order to assist the spell. If he had tried to grab this needle like an hour earlier, he would have went right through it, but since the ritual had begun, he was able to touch it. Question number 8. How did Egg Shen get up there?
Wasn't easy!
Question number 9. What's that little character you see when Lightning dies? So in the big finale of the film, Lightning is the last remaining member of the Three Storms, and he's after our heroes. He really takes his time doing it, and is climbing up to get them when Egg Shen drops down a Buddha statue directly onto his head, killing him and dropping him down into the blazing inferno below. As he dies, stray bolts of his electricity stream out around them, and the last remaining bits of it form a tiny Chinese character. It's small and not extremely prevalent, but it's noticeable enough that when you see it, your general reaction is, what was that? Well, the answer for this one is pretty blatant, since it's a fun little inside joke from the visual effects team, and the symbol is that for the word carpenter, a minor tribute to the film's director. But here at Unanswered Questions, we're never satisfied with the obvious behind the scenes answer. We want to find a reason in film for it to be there. Why would Lightning make that little symbol? Well, it's simple. It's his last word. His final word was carpenter. You see, Lightning never really wanted to be a henchman, but when you have the ability to fire bolts of lightning out of your hands, paired with a penchant for being kinda evil, what else you gonna do? But Lightning, good old Lightning, he had this yearning deep down, this long-term regret that in his heart of hearts, he was never truly evil. Sure, in his youth, that fire raged in his belly and the darkness devoured him, but as he grew older, like 23, the embers cooled and his resentment softened. He realized far too late that he was living a lie and simply acting as his fellow Storms expected him to. After all, they were essentially his family now, and he wouldn't want to let them down. And let's face it, the perks of the job were hard to pass up, but there was still that little voice, that tiny part of him, that little angel on his shoulder reminding him of who he truly wanted to be, what vocation he was truly meant for. His one true calling in life, a carpenter. Question number 10. Does that potion even work? A big part of the final battle is the potion that the group takes. Egg says that it will allow them to see things no one else can see and do things no one else can do. But does it really even do anything? Here's what we know. After they take it, Jack says he's feeling pretty good.
I feel kind of invincible.
Possibly an effect of the potion. And the group goes down to fight. During the fight, well, I'm not sure that we see any of the effects of the potion, leading me to think that it doesn't even work. Why do I think that? Well, first of all, most of the crew that drink it are just fighting the Wing Kong ground soldiers, and they do pretty well against them. But they did pretty well against them earlier too, and would have won the alleyway battle were it not for the interruption of the Three Storms. So if they had taken an enhancing potion, you would think that they would just go down there and just wipe the red sash guys out like super fast. But it just looks like a regular battle. Egg does pretty well, but it's all based on using the tricks from the 6 demon bag. He doesn't really show any exceptional abilities that weren't aided by an additional magic item. So it's debatable if the potion is responsible for any of that. But the main reason I don't think the potion really does anything is Jack. After he takes it, he doesn't really do anything that he wasn't able to do before. In fact, he seems even more inadequate and clumsy than before. He knocks himself out and is then trapped under the weight of one of the foot soldiers. He even almost gets killed by the Wild Man if not for the timely actions of Gracie, who is able to knock him out without the use of a magic potion. You could say that his knife catching trick with Lopan is due to the potion's effects, but it's really no different than catching the bottle in the beginning. It's not all in the potion, damn it, it's
On the reflexes.
The only one that it could be argued seems to show a benefit from the potion is Wang, since he's able to go toe-to-toe with Rain, or I guess jump to jump, or whatever metaphor you want to use there. But I would contend that Wang always showed this level of ability. Look at this earlier scene. Wang literally takes out an entire group of thugs single-handedly in a matter of about a minute. It may have taken him some time to work up to displaying this level of ability, but that's because his mind and spirit were going north and south. but I contend that he always has this level of skill. If not, then why wouldn't any other Chang Sing, who are all accomplished martial artists, judging from the earlier fight, show these same skills? Or why isn't Jack at least halfway capable? You know what I think that potion is, judging from the fact that it didn't really seem to enhance Jack's abilities, but it did make him feel pretty good and invincible, and the fact that Egg shouted, "Cheers!" before drinking it. I think that the potion was just a little bit of good old liquid courage. A little bit of alcohol to get them loosened up before the fight. I mean, come on, when asked what it does, Egg says it gives you
Use buzz.
So I rest my case. Question number 11. What was up with Thunder's death? So here's an interesting question that lots of fans have a debate about, and that's what Thunder's intentions were with his death. Here's what we see. Several times throughout the film, Thunder demonstrates the ability to expand out his body, increasing in mass. In the end, when he sees his master Lo Pan dead on the floor, his face shows a look of pure despondence. He's clearly upset and then begins to expand. While doing so, he seems to scream in pain, cuts open his outfit, and then bursts. The strength of the blast knocks in the walls, but what happened here? Did he commit suicide at the notion of Lo's death? The way I see it is that there's two options. The first is the more obvious one. Upon seeing his master dead, he realized that there was no going forward for him. He wanted to die. But he also knew that his inflating ability could cause some heavy-duty destruction. He chose this method with the hopes that he would also be able to kill all of his enemies, the ones who murdered his leader. I mean, the blast nearly crushed the crew, so it seems like his thinking was correct, but his timing was a little off. But here's the other option, because when he's expanding, maybe it's just me, or some other people on the internet, but I think his expression is a bit more pained and his scream a bit more tortured than the resolute look that he had a moment ago. So, what if he was extremely upset and planned to bulk up his size, like he can do, with the intentions of killing Jack and Wang, but either his tortured and emotional state of mind made him lose control, or possibly Lo Pan's powers helped him keep in check. I don't like that second portion because Lightning seemed to handle his power just fine, and I would figure that if it affected Thunder, it would affect Lightning as well. But I know that there's some that think that there's a chance that this explosion wasn't necessarily intentional and was simply his power out of control. But I'm not in line with that for one reason. He's standing still. I would think that if he intended to bulk up an attack, he probably wouldn't just stand in one spot. His stationary stance seems to indicate that he's simply acting as a human bomb, looking to take out as many enemies as he can. Question number 12. What's all this I hear about Jack Burton and Buckaroo Bonsai? So unbeknownst to many, there is a link between Big Trouble in Little China and Buckaroo Bonsai, but it's not the one that you may have heard. See, Big Trouble has a writing credit for W.D. Richter. He's listed as adapting the screenplay. Now, because Richter is the director of Buckaroo Bonsai, and that film ends with a promise of a sequel called Buckaroo Bonsai vs. the World Crime League, it's long been rumored that once it was realized that film would not happen, he retooled it into a script for Big Trouble, altering characters and locations, but maintaining some of the settings and action set pieces. This information has appeared on both IMDb and Wikipedia as being accurate. The myth is so widespread that there have been fanfics and alternate stories featuring Jack and Buckaroo fighting side by side. But here's the catch. Even though Richter was predominantly known as a writer and only directed 2 films, he didn't actually write the script for Buckaroo, nor was he responsible for the sequel script. Instead, that was handled by the writer of the first film, Mac Rauch. So for Richter to have used it to alter it for Big Trouble, with no credit to Max, he would have had to have stolen it. So, no, the adapted by credit was there for adapting his version of the script from the original form of the screenplay for Big Trouble, which was written by Gary Goldman and David Weinstein, which was actually a Western set in the 1800s. In their version, Jack was a cowboy, and Richter was brought in to take that version and adapt it into modern times, and basically revamped it from the ground up. Richter himself is on record saying that the Buckaroo story is 100% urban legend and there's no truth to it. So yeah, there is a link to Buckaroo in that the final version of the script is written by the guy who directed Buckaroo Bonsai, but that's it. So I guess, wherever Jack goes, there he is. Question number 13. What happened to good old Jack afterwards? Like I covered in my failure to launch video the other day, there were no sequels to the film, so the fate of Jack is up in the air. Some believe that he'd fall victim to the wild man, considering how easily it was to get the drop on him earlier, and that was when he was equipped with magic potion, and if there was indeed any magic potion to begin with. But either way, he was in a battle situation and was caught unaware. After that's all over, he'd surely be less equipped to expect an ambush by the Ginger Beast, and it would likely take him out. Others believe that no matter what, Jack would prevail, given that he seems to have a rather unworldly luck in overcoming these kinds of situations. Thankfully, there's sort of an official continuation of the film in comic book form from Boom Studios. It was written by comic legend Eric Powell and John Carpenter, who would assist with the plotting. It actually takes place in the 80s right after the movie, picking up right where that one left off. And like I mentioned before, it's told that the Wild Man is actually in Jack's truck because it's now bonded to him since he killed Lo Pan. The series went on for 25 issues and featured all the characters from the film. Also, since it's comic books and anything is possible, there was a side series featuring a crossover that you've been waiting for with Big Trouble in Little China and Escape from New York. In this one, Jack has to team up with Snake Plissken and also several other interdimensional counterparts, and it's revealed that Jack and Snake are the same person, just from different universes. After that was over, there was another 12-issue series entitled Big Trouble in Little China Old Man Jack that took place in 2020 with Jack in his 60s or 70s now, whatever. When it seems like the ancient god Ching Dai is going to take over and destroy the Earth, it's up to Jack and an unlikely ally in David Lo Pan to save the day. It served as both a sequel to the 25-issue series, but could actually be read on its own as well. It ended in a melancholy manner with Jack dying, but Lo Pan using magic to help out and allow Jack to become frozen for eternity in his happiest memory, revealed to be the end of the movie, this time returning to kiss Gracie. So there you have it, a baker's dozen of questions from the movie Big Trouble in Little China. Got all them suckers answered, and the check is in the mail. I hope you liked those. I hope you enjoyed them. If you have other questions about the movie or you didn't like these ones, you could probably stuff it. But you know what? Put it in the comments down below anyhow. I like to see that kind of stuff. But if you like the questions, I guess put that down there too. I also like to see that. I like a lot of things. Liking things is kind of what I do. But hey, that's what it's there for. If you want to like things yourself, you can like the video. You could also subscribe to the channel. That would be pretty awesome. Or go to patreon.com/movietimelines like these guys over here and help support my trucking biz. That would be pretty cool if you did that because, they're pretty cool people too. But in the meantime, keep on trucking. I'll see you shortly for another great video. All right, over and out.